Wheezy has been one of the hottest producers in the trap scene for years now. His wavy, anthemic melodies and unique ear for bouncy drums have made him stand out, and he always has fresh sounds to bring to the table. So today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into all the genius production techniques used on Wheezy's hardest beats and make our own 2 beats inspired by some of his most iconic records. The sauce continues to get crazier as the video goes on, so stay tuned. We've got a ton to unpack, and there's a ton of gems that you could apply to your beats and your melodies, so sit back and get ready to go inside the wavy, anthemic world of Wheezy's genius production.
Wheezy out of here.
One of the first things that comes to mind when I think of a Wheezy beat is a unique, wavy melody. Throughout the years, Wheezy has always been bringing new, fresh-sounding melodies to the light, and even though a good amount of these melodies are loops that are made by sample makers that he works with, it takes a certain skill to be able to hear unique melodies and figure out a way to turn that into something that can go mainstream. And being willing to take a risk on new sounds and new vibes, instead of just using the same proven thing over and over again, is definitely one of the reasons he's been able to stay on top of the game all of these years. Anyways, one of the go-to instruments that I think of when I think of a Wheezy beat is a guitar, similar to the ones on these records.
I'm pushing P, that's my favorite alphabet.
Went through the ice in this platinum, I did a 180, I went up the wrong way.
These guitars all have a super similar chord progression that you can hear across a ton of Wheezy's beats. A 1-4, which is the first chord in a minor scale and the 4th chord in a minor scale. But to think of it more simply, you just start with 1 minor chord, copy and paste that over twice, and then pitch the 2nd chord up 5 semitones. And when you do that, you get a progression that sounds like this. Now, to get that on guitar, I wanted to steer clear of using VSTs because VSTs just have this cheap digital sound and it's almost impossible to recreate that real guitar sound. So using a VST won't give that unique, expensive vibe that Wheezy's melodies have. So I went into the Melody Mastery phrase kit and I found this guitar starter that has a 1-4 chord progression. And it sounds like this. That sounds great, but it sounds a little bit too busy for what I'm going for. So I put some halftime on it, pitched it, and got this. Now, this is a good start, but I didn't want this to just feel like some boring standard guitar loop. And in recent years, Wheezy has been doing a lot more of these synth-based beats, using loops from people like Des Wright, who are known for crazy synth samples. And on these Des loops that Wheezy picks, he often uses these super ear-grabbing synth arps that kind of make the whole loop, in my opinion. So I wanted to do the same thing in our melody. And to do that, I went into the Melody Mastery Analog Lab bank to grab a lead preset because the leads in this bank sound super amazing when you play them in this synth ARP kind of fashion. So I grabbed this Love lead from the preset bank, and then I also grabbed an ARP MIDI from inside the Melody Mastery MIDI kit. And when you put those together, it sounds like this. Now, when you're looking at this MIDI, it can look kind of crazy, but it's actually really, really simple. It's really just these 4 notes that are played super quick, but then I duplicated them up an octave here and down an octave here. So it's literally just this, right? You just put those on different octaves and it sounds crazy. Now that we got the guitar and that crazy sounding synth ARP, we've got a great foundation for the melody. So for the rest, I don't want to add too much. And one of my favorite techniques whenever I have a melody at this point where I don't really want to add a bunch of new sounds, but I still want to fill it out a little bit more, is to make other uses for the sounds that we have instead of just adding on a bunch of other instruments. So in this example, what I did is I ran the whole melody that we had just made through my Chroma Console guitar pedal. And inside the guitar pedal, I pretty much reversed it, delayed it, and chopped the audio and also pitched it up an octave to get this more high energy kind of section for the sample. That's sounding crazy, but real quick, I want to show you how you can get that effect without using a real guitar pedal. So to do something similar in the box, I'm just going to combine those 2 stems into one audio file. Then I'm going to chop it every half bar like this. Then I'm going to drag every single chop halfway to the left like this. So we're only getting this. Then I'm going to get rid of all these spaces and play these together faster like this. And then once I got this little 2-bar pattern right here, I'm just gonna go in and reverse each little chop, pitch everything up 1 octave, add these little fades, and then you get something like this. And that definitely sounds cool doing it in the box, but if I'm being real, doing it with a real analog guitar pedal just has such a different workflow, such a different texture, that's just really hard to replicate and get that same vibe inside of a computer. So if you want to really level up the texture of your melodies and make your loops stand out, you've got to check out Melody Master. Inside of here, I've got a ton of these crazy guitar pedal phrases that'll instantly add a ton of unique flavor to your melodies, and also that guitar starter that you heard and the preset for that synth ARP are both sounds from inside the kit. And like I said, if you want that Wheezy sound to your melodies, they've got to sound expensive and unique. And the best way to get that is with real instrument phrases, real analog synth, guitar pedal stuff. And this Melody Master kit has all of that. So if you want to level up your melodies today, you can use the code out of here for 43% off Melody Mastery. It'll be the first link in the description. Definitely don't forget to use that discount code. And throughout this whole video, I'm going to be showing more sounds from the kit. But enough of that shameless plug. Let's get back into the melody. For the next sound, I wanted to take some inspiration from south of France off of mixtape Pluto. I love that guitar and simple vocal chop kind of sound combination. And as I was listening to this loop, I felt like I could do something similar kind of to help transition between those 2 chords that the guitar is playing. And I kind of had a specific idea in my mind. So instead of using a vocal chop and trying to make it fit the vibe, I just sang this super simple melody 4 times on top of each other, layered it all together, panned some left, some right, and then I got this. That's sounding okay, but I wanted the vocal to be more ambient and in the back, kind of like on South of France. So I bounced all those vocal takes down into one file, filtered it, added reverb and some delay, and you get this. Next up, I wanted to add a little bit more synth elements just to fill it out a little bit, not trying to do anything crazy. So I found this one nice synth key on my Prophet 10 and played in these simple chords. And once I had that, the main sections of the melody were 100% finished. So now I wanted to add a subtle switch up section. And I have an insane flipping technique that I actually know for a fact was used on a Wheezy record. And I cannot take credit for this idea. It was all my boy Ghost Rage who made the beat with Wheezy for Weirdo by Nav.
Up in the morning, I'm already high by the time that I get suited up.
As you can tell, this loop is super sporadic and kind of all over the place, but at the same time, it's super wavy and unique. And the reason it has this kind of sound is because my boy Ghost Rage flipped it like crazy. And he actually showed me how he did this when we were in LA together. And essentially what he does is he drags in a completely finished loop into his sampler, almost like it's just a 1-note one-shot that you would make a normal melody MIDI with. And then he resamples that melody inside the piano roll and tries to make a dope pattern with it. So the first thing I did for this technique is I deleted the guitar, the vocal in those last synth keys, and I just used the synth ARP and that kind of guitar pedal phrase that we made earlier and bounced those into one audio file. So you get this. And then as you can see, when you load it in, if we play it at the original pitch, it just plays through like this, right? But then if we play it lower, it's going to play through slower. If we play it higher, it goes way faster. So essentially what Ghost Rage did in that weirdo flip is just played around trying to find some kind of cool pattern. And that's exactly what I did right here. I played it an octave lower, so it's playing half as fast in the low end. And then I added these little accents that are playing in that high octave, playing way faster. And you get a really cool pattern like this. And once I did that, the melody was finished. So now it's time to get into Wheezy's signature, the drums. My favorite part of Wheezy's production has got to be his drums. They're always super bouncy, and in a lot of his recent records he's had some really weird and cool drum bounces with some super dope drum techniques that I'm going to show in the second beat in this video. But for now I want to stick with more of the typical basic Wheezy kind of bounce. Anyways, after listening back to Wheezy's discography over the past few days, I found 2 examples of these more typical bouncy Wheezy drums that I just love.
Put a tracker on that bitch if you love her, cause she coming through like a goon squad. I put it on and is over.
Go seat on a fucking helicopter, double C, no Chanel, cause she's bad, bad, bad.
One of the key parts to the bounce on both of these records is adding a 16th note bounce. And I'll get into that a little bit more later, but just keep that in mind. Anyways, the first sound that I wanted to start with was a hi-hat, and I really liked how stop and go the hi-hats were on both of those records. So I did that stop and go kind of pattern in our beat and got this. Next up, I added a little hi-hat roll, but instead of just putting it in the regular pattern, I actually duplicated that sound onto a new track. And on that track, I put on reverb and a flanger effect to just give it this subtle, different kind of vibe compared to the main hi-hat. You can hear Wheezy doing this technique on Family and Friends by Nav, actually using the Effectrix plugin, but I don't actually have that plugin, so I just did it manually by duplicating that track and putting different effects on just the hi-hat roll.
Wheezy out here.
Anyways, next up, I added a snare and an open hat, as well as some counter snares and claps just to add more to the bounce. That's sounding nice and bouncy. And like I said earlier, the key to this feeling is that 16th note bounce. And instead of just talking about it, let me go in the screen and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so if we go in here, you can see that I'm using 16th notes a lot in almost all these patterns. So in the hi-hat, we have this little 16th note hit right here. Take a listen. You see how it's faster than if we did this? It's just a little bit more bouncy. We have another 16th note roll there later in the pattern. And then one of the key sounds that's adding a lot of bounce is this little bounce snare right here. If we take it out, then add it back in, it's because it's hitting on that 16th note. Typically, it would be hitting on an 8th note, so it would be either right here or it'd be right there. And let's just take a listen to what that sounds like. Right? It's not bad. Just a little bit more predictable. When it's just a little bit off from where you would normally have it, it just adds this like unique kind of bounce to it. And we did the same exact thing right here on the clap. If we were to have it right here, take a listen to how the bounce sounds. Compared to this just seems a lot more fluid and bouncy. Anyways, now that we have that, I wanted to glue the drums together with a hard-hitting 808. And honestly, listening back to a bunch of Wheezy's records, I realized how simple he leaves the 808 patterns. I don't know why, I kind of expected them to be super complex and bouncy, but in most of his beats, he kind of lets the hi-hat, claps, and snares kind of dictate the bounce of the beat, and the 808's just there to add that knock.
The dash is digi, the schedule busy. My head in a hoodie, my shorty a goodie, my cousin.
Wheezy out here. Wheezy out here.
So I took some inspiration from those records, grabbed a hard-hitting short spins 808, and put down this pattern. But just for the sake of this video, I wanted to spice it up a little bit towards the end of the 808 pattern and add an 808 roll like the one you can hear on Chanel Go Get It. And to make room for this roll, I actually moved the snare 1/4 beat to the right, and you can actually hear Wheezy doing this a lot in his beats. Doing this delay on the last snare gives the beat a unique bounce because you kind of are anticipating the snare to hit where it always is, and then it hits just a little bit later. But moving it a little bit later also created this little pocket where I had space to add in an 808 roll without the snare and the 808 clashing. And then on top of that, I also added a little snare roll just to finish off every 8 bars, which is something that Wheezy does all the time in his beats, and you get this. And that's it for the first section of the drums. But I wanted to change the drums very subtly to kind of match that flipped part of the melody that we did earlier, just to make the beat evolve a little bit more with the loop. And since the guitar dropped out in that section and all we had was this synthy kind of vibe, it felt super similar to Field Trip by Kanye. So I swapped out the snare that we had for a more harsh one like the one on Field Trip. Then I listened to Stiff Gang by Lil Baby and Embarrassed by Don Toliver. And I noticed that Wheezy does this like quarter note bounce on his 808s. Kind of like a bum, 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 bum.
Do it cause I want to.
I don't need to cut it. I'm saying that.
So I did that same kind of pattern with the 808 in this section, and then I swapped those stop and go hi-hats out for just a straight two-step hi-hat pattern, just to make sure there wasn't too much going on in this section. And then finally, to finish this first beat, I took some inspiration from That's It, where the song starts with the main guitar riff reversed.
Me and Wheezy, that's the way. The ice in this.
I did the same exact thing to our guitar, and you get this. I'll play the 100% finished beat at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's dive into another side of Wheezy's production. Wheezy has a ton of those wavy guitar and synth kind of vibes in his discography, but especially in recent years, he's also been getting into more dark stuff that you can hear all over mixtape Pluto, and also in his recent work with Lil Baby. So for that second beat, I kind of want to dive into that more dark anthemic kind of world. And on a lot of these records, my favorite part is 100% the drums. I feel like there's certain beats where the melody deserves to kind of take the front seat and be the coolest part of the beat, and the drums are just kind of there to make it hit. But on some of these newer beats, I feel like the drums are the coolest part of the beat, and I'm here for it. Take a listen to how crazy the drum bounce on these records are.
Ace look at my chain, I got a few keys on. Bitch fuck around and fainting when she see my. Yeah. Robbing down a nigga say I'm fucking the game up with all of these bitches. I'm paying too much. I'm getting a lot of money. Yeah, I swear to God.
I love that old D-rich trap kind of vibe that these drums have, so I definitely wanted to go for that same kind of sound here. Anyways, to ensure we have a super unique and cool drum bounce, on this beat, I'm actually going to start with the drums first. I want the melody to be there just to kind of accent the drums, not the other way around. So to start out, I wanted to set the foundation with an 808. And I grabbed this super subby 808, similar to the one that you can hear on 99 by Lil Baby. And like I mentioned in that first beat, Wheezy's 808s are usually dumb simple, so I kept this pattern super simple. From here, I wanted to pick up the energy and get the bounce going on these drums, and typically I would go to a hi-hat to do this, but I noticed in a lot of these type of beats that Wheezy's doing, there's either no hi-hat or a very simple hi-hat. Take a listen.
If it was once, then it might have been lucky if I did it 2 times and stand for something. All my niggas say I'm I swear to God.
I think it's crazy that even with little to no hi-hat, there's still so much energy and bounce in these drums. And the reason is, instead of using a super fast-paced hi-hat to kind of drive the rhythm of the beat, Wheezy's often using a mixture of claps, percussion, snares, and open hats to fill out the pattern. Doing this gives the beat a whole different vibe, and it feels a lot cooler than just the standard two-step cookie-cutter trap beats. So to replicate this kind of vibe, I started with the main clap, and then some bounce snares and bounce claps, as well as some percussion. Take a listen. As you can tell, we've got a nice bounce going even without having any hi-hats. So let's keep adding on to that. If you listen to songs like Made My Hoe Faint and South of France, you can hear this one chant sound that Wheezy's been using a lot recently.
Ace look at my chain, I got a few keys on. Bitch fuck around and fainting when she see my.
For whatever reason, I really like the way that sounds, so I added that along with another classic trap chant effect, and I got this. Also, if you listen to 99, you can hear this super cool snare roll that kind of rises up into the main snare clap hit every 2 bars.
I know woo with me without a doubt. I snap, he gon' tweak.
I really liked that, and I thought it would fit perfect in this bounce, so I added that as well by doing a 16th triplet roll that kind of rises in volume and velocity into that main clap hit. Finally, a lot of producers like Metro have been using this D-rich crash sound recently. And you can hear Wheezy using it in some of his more recent stuff as well, so I threw that in there too. And finally, for this section, it felt just a tiny bit too empty without a hi-hat sound, so I went back and listened to That's Facts to see how the hi-hats were done on that record.
Ain't from the hood, everybody ain't gonna do. I really paid out cash for that. Cash. Nigga, that's
You can hear in this beat that he uses the hi-hat almost like a perk sound. It's not hitting with the one with the standard two-step pattern that you would expect in a trap beat. Just kind of randomly hits throughout the pattern just to kind of accent wherever there's little pockets that can be filled. So I put down a super simple hi-hat pattern and you get this. So like I was mentioning earlier, the hi-hat is super simple if you look at this pattern. It's playing very sparsely, but I think it's interesting if you open up all the midis together, you can see that there is a decent amount going on, kind of similar to how an actual hi-hat pattern would look. So it's more about just using different claps, snares, and percussion sounds to build that bounce rather than just relying on a hi-hat. Now that we have that down, let's move on to the melody. I'm gonna add a B section to these drums later, but right now I just wanted to get the melody down so I had more to work off of. For the melody on this one, I wanted to feel dark, big, and anthemic. And the easiest way to get that vibe is by using orchestral sounds like brass and violins. And of course, we all know Wheezy uses orchestral sounds on records like Hot by Young Thug. So I wanted to incorporate that anthemic orchestral sound, but in a different way, kind of similar to the brass that you can hear on 99 and That's Facts.
they depending on me now. Them believes on my feet. A lot of money ain't from the hood. Everybody ain't gonna do. I really paid out cash for that.
So I went into the melody mastery kit and grabbed this crazy live trumpet and trombone starter that I had made a few months back. And I'll show you how I actually made that live instrument starter in a second. But for now, take a listen. Sounding sick, and I'm definitely gonna have to flip that a little bit later to make it sound a little bit more dark. But first, let's dive into the original project file for that starter and show you how I made that. So the first thing I did is I went into East West Opus and I grabbed these horns and put down this little pattern. Then I started building on top of that with multiple layers of different VST horns. I feel like a lot of times people try to put all the patterns just in one instance of a VST. But when you want it to sound like a real live orchestra, you want to have multiple layers of different instruments working together. After adding all those different instruments, the MIDI still only looks like this. It's because they're all playing the exact same thing, but with different instruments playing each individual melodic line. And then you get this. After that, I added in these super low brass notes. And once I had all that, I sent it to my boy who plays the trumpet and the trombone, and I had him replay every single layer that I had composed with the VSTs. So he sent back real live brass recordings, and this is how I make all my live instrument starters for kits like Melody Mastery, and he sent back this. Instantly sounds way better, but it's the exact melody that I had in my head. Then what I did is I combined those VSTs and those real ones together so that I can get the texture of the real instruments, but that extra body and kind of just big sound that the VST has. When you combine all that together, you get this. So now that we have that, let's flip that starter and make it sound a little bit more dark. One of the easiest things that you can do that instantly just darkens the vibe a little bit and simplifies stuff is throw on halftime. So that's exactly what I did. After I half sped that main brass, I took the stems from the starter and I grabbed those super low bass notes and just dragged that underneath just to kind of thicken it up. And then the brass was sounding good, so I wanted to add in some strings. And you can hear these dark string melodies all over Wheezy's beats on Mixtape Pluto. And also on Lil Baby's last album, you can hear these kind of stabby spiccato violins on the melody for Stuff with Travis Scott. So with that in mind, I went into East West Opus and grabbed these spiccato violin presets and put down this repetitive stabby pattern that has this dark energy. Now I just wanted to add some finishing touches to have some variation for A and B sections. And following that theme of those evil string melodies, I took some inspiration from one of my all-time favorite beats that Wheezy has produced on, 7:12 p.m. by Future. To achieve this crazy lead violin sound, you just cannot use a VST, which is exactly why I worked for months with session musicians for that melody mastery kit. So once I had that idea to add some 7:12 p.m. kind of violins to this melody, Melody Mastery was the first place that I looked for a top line like that. And in just a few clicks, I found a phrase that fit perfectly. And once I had that added, I added a synth bass from the Melody Mastery preset bank just to kind of thicken up this part of the melody. And then for a second switch up kind of section, I took out that lead violin that we just added, kept all the other elements the same. And then I took some inspiration from Told My, where you can hear these old Koopsta Memphis vocals that are sampled and being played during the bridge section. But instead of using a real Memphis sample, I went into my Elements of Trap folder of Memphis vocals that I recorded myself, and I found this one.
Gang shit, ain't no lame shit. I'ma blast a motherfucker, let it bang, bitch.
Once I had that down, I finished off the melody just by adding this super simple trap bell. And now that we got the melody done, it's time to do that drum switch up. First thing I wanted to do was switch up the 808. If you listen to Wheezy's drums on 99, you can hear that he starts with this punchy spins kind of 808, and then he goes into that subby 808, similar to the one that we used earlier. So I did that same thing here, just kind of reversing it, starting with the subby 808 and going into a more punchy one. But instead of just using a spins 808, I wanted to use a super fuzzy and distorted 808, like the one you can hear on A-Say Gang. So I copied the 808 pattern onto this distorted 808, and it instantly gave the drums on this section a new vibe. But I wanted to change it even more. So I took out a lot of those perks, snares, and claps from that first section to make some room for some busier hi-hats. Because if I put busy hi-hats underneath all those crazy percussive elements, it would just be sounds attacking you from every direction, and it wouldn't sound good. And side note, I think that this is a tip that a lot of you guys can apply to your production. I feel like whenever you're adding in a bunch of cool ideas, it can be easy to fall in love with all these cool techniques that you're using. You try to have everything playing all at once, but then it just sounds messy, and it kind of ruins the whole vibe. So if you want to incorporate all those cool ideas that you have into your beat, just make sure that they're arranged into different sections. And this is one, going to make your beat feel like it's evolving throughout the pattern, and two, each pattern will actually be simple and easy to rap on. Anyways, once I took those sounds out, I wanted to take some inspiration from No Debate by Nav and Young Thug, as well as Told My for the hi-hat bounce that I wanted.
I just hit some shit while I was down asleep. Wheezy out of here.
I really like the bounce that both of these records have, where it has this kind of stop and go feeling whenever that second snare hits. So I did that with the hi-hats here, adding this little 16th note bounce. And with all of that combined, I got this for the B section of the drums. Finally, to finish off this second beat, I added one final touch. If you listen to That's Facts, the beat comes in with no 808, and then the 808 comes in delayed, like 2 bars later.
Been lucky if I did it 2 times in the staff or something. All my niggas say I'm fucking the game up.
I think doing that starts the song off super cool. So I did the same thing in the second beat, and then it was 100% finished. So before I play the first and the second beat all the way through, if you've enjoyed this video so far, hit that subscribe button so I can keep making more videos like this for you guys. And now that you've done that, let's dive back into that first beat.
I'ma blast a motherfucker, let it bang, bitch. Gang shit, ain't no lame shit. I'ma blast a motherfucker, let it bang, bitch.
Thank you for watching to the end of this one. Just as a reminder, almost every single sound that you heard in the melodies of those beats are from the melody mastery kits, everything from the live brass starter, live violins, guitar, synth presets, all that. You can get all that for 43% off if you use that code out of here and click the first link in the description down below. So if you want to level up your melodies, don't sleep, click that link and use that discount code, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.